Alrighty. Hello, everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining us here today for our consular processing updates with attorney Ruby Powers. She's the managing attorney here at Powers Law Group. And today we're just going to give you guys a little bit of updates on consular processing. I know Attorney Powers wanted to touch bases on specific topics that are important right now. And just starting off a little bit about Attorney Powers, she founded Powers Law Group in 2000 and was it November
Yes.
2009?
I know that answer.
Yeah, she started the firm in 2009. She is also an author of Build and Manage Your Successful Immigration Law Practice. 1010 would recommend if you guys want to get a good read. And yeah, I'll let Attorney Powers take it away.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us. We put this together because we've had a couple of consular appointments being scheduled and in 2 different locations recently, and we've got more I'm sure are going to be on their way. And it made me think about some of the conversations people who either are our existing clients or considering hiring us, or maybe they filed pro se and they're concerned, what happens when they get an appointment? Are they ready for it? So I just wanted to do a little talk about that, focusing mostly on the immigrant visas on this conversation, but I can give you a little bit some updates about some employment matters as well. So we're going to talk about the background real fast, the consular updates, some MVC, and preparing for your visa appointment. And we'll get straight to it. But if you have any questions, where do they put it in the Q&A?
Yeah.
And then you also, you could raise your hand and we could have your question at some point as well. So, the consular processing is what you do for everything from an immigrant visa, so married to a U.S. citizen, or a U.S. citizen is petitioning for their parents, to but this is all abroad, so you do it through the consulate. And generally, you file a first petition, you go through a national visa center, and then you wait for the appointment. So there's almost like a big step process, and it's been slowed down in every different area recently. So there's different categories for immigrant petition, and there's also those for employment-based, and there's humanitarian. But the consular processing is not just for immigrant matters. It can also be for like E2 visas or student visas, some non-immigrant visas. So those are different things. But really, if you're watching this, you probably already know that. You're concerned about what's going on with the process. Maybe you already have one pending. There's several things going on. Okay, so Trump had made a proclamation back, I think it was in April, and then he extended it to June, and then it extended to the end of the year. And then about a couple of weeks ago, he extended it all the way to March for certain visas. And as of the last time I checked, which was about yesterday, that is still in place, and it restricted certain visa types from coming in, and but that could be rescinded or changed. So we're monitoring that. See, the other thing when we're talking about this is there's some things that are because of the CDC that
Yeah.
affects the travel restrictions. And then there's some things that are restricted by immigration. And then there's some things that are restricted by the country that you're in. And for example, most of Europe, if you had been in the US, in one of those countries, you couldn't come to the US directly. You would have had to go somewhere else for 2 weeks and then come into the US. But then that transient country might have its own restrictions of quarantine, like Canada does, and Mexico is not allowing that many. There's a lot of restrictions everywhere. So honestly, it's best to stay put, it seems
Yeah.
like, because it's just too complicated to figure out where you can go. But we're monitoring this, just as much as Trump made so many changes. Biden is trying, on the same day he was took the oath in inauguration, he went and signed a whole bunch of executive orders and to try to reverse some of those things, including the the travel bans, which some people call the Muslim ban, which was rescinded on 2 days ago. So those are some different updates. We're still monitoring all of those things. One other thing to say is that we have a nominee for the Secretary of State. It's Andrew Blinken, and he has been with the Department of State for a very long time, and it looks very promising that he'll be affirmed by the Senate, and so we'll continue to monitor that. But generally, the way I look at it is when you get a new Secretary of State, is that they come in with their culture and their way of doing things, and then it takes a while for them to sort of pass on the strategy and the plan for the rest, and sort of shift those policies. So we'll be monitoring that. But really, the approach at the State Department, there was many denials under the Trump administration. It has been more of a you're denied until you can approve me. You can prove me to be approved, and that you have to get me there, and that they weren't giving deference to prior approvals, and so it's been more hostile, I guess you could say. And so we're hoping, and since there's not a lot of consular review, it's can be very tough to remedy matters. So we'll continue to monitor that. But the other thing we're seeing is that the consulates have been opening up. We've recently had appointments in London and Juarez in Mexico. And so that's why it inspired me to do this this presentation. And so we have seen immigrant appointments being scheduled. Now the consulates, it's not like 100% everywhere. I mean, they all have different degrees of concern with COVID, and the services that they are willing to provide. But you could check to see if you're waiting for an appointment, if the consulate that you're waiting for is starting to schedule appointments. So the thing is that if you are in queue and you're waiting, then you've got to be ready to get ready for your appointment. So the NVC, which the National Visa Center, is that holding repository, I guess, of all the documents. And so what we've also seen is that, let me give you a timeline, for example, these long waits. The client that has the interview in February in Mexico was scheduled in March 2020, and it was canceled due to COVID. So that's our first one who's been scheduled. I've also heard from other attorneys that they had appointments in January from those March 2020 rescheduling. And Juarez is the largest embassy of all of them, and they're the only one that processes the immigrant visas for Mexico. So that's really great to know that they're already scheduling those appointments, but they have a huge backlog. I mean, the National Visa Center, so after let's say the I-130 was approved, you go to the National Visa Center. The National Visa Center was taking like 5 or 8 months before COVID, and now I don't even know what it's going to be once the appointments start getting scheduled. But the other thing to note, so there's long wait times. The other thing is there's some country, they had done a pilot program to allow people to submit some documents electronically. And whenever you did that, it was definitely faster than those who have sent the paper version. The other thing is when you submit your DS-260, it gets locked, and if you need to get ready for your appointment and change any information, you would have to get it unlocked. Now that can be complicated, but the reason I mention that is because what if your passport is about to expire by the time your appointment happens, which is really, I think, probably one of the biggest things you have to be ready for the consular appointment. So the MVC, it's there. It takes a long time, and don't really know what much to say about that. But sometimes you can submit things and say, I need more time to submit the criminal record, or what have you. So it doesn't have to be perfect. But I would just say, if you're trying to do this, get your stuff in, because you're going to be waiting, and hopefully they can hire more people and speed things up, but it could take a while. So, and then also, if there is a lot of different potential reforms, it could make, like if they move the visa bulletin, which we still, as of yesterday, we didn't have the new visa bulletin for February. I think we're waiting to see what that's going to look like. Okay, so this is the what I really wanted to talk about is preparing for your appointment. So review all the documents that were previously filed. You want to make sure that it's correct and that if there's been any major changes, if it's not, but basically everything that the DS-260, normally we don't have to update, but the problem is it's tied to your passport number. And if your passport's expired, you need to go get a new one. So one thing I would suggest is you should look at when is your passport going to expire, and then you really should have a few years out, because whenever you finally do get an appointment, you have to have more than 6 months on your validity before they can actually put the visa in your stamp. Yes, the visa, put the visa, stamp the visa in your passport. And so that happened to a client recently, that we realized the passport is expiring and it won't have enough time. That's the biggest thing I wanted to tell you all, is to make sure, because the other thing we've also seen is like certain countries, the embassy, their consulates are not open, or they have to go in person, or there's lack of paper, there's something that's causing. So we're going to have to monitor that to see some workarounds, but we really don't want to be that exception asking for a favor right now, because so monitor your passport expiration date. And the other thing that's really important is the I-64. That always gets outdated by the time you turn in the MVC between the visa appointment. So you want to make sure that right before you go, that you have the new pay stubs, taxes, and if it's, taxes for 2020 are not due till April 15th unless they change that of this year. And so you'd want to have that up to date as well, and making sure you have the civil documents. The other thing is that when you go, you'll have to do the medical exam, and if you haven't already submitted your police clearance records, some countries you can go get them when you're near the appointment, and make sure that you are prepared. You know what's in your packet. You know what was submitted. When people hire us, we prep them. We do a mock interview. We give them a lot of information, and we just want to make sure we be ready, because a lot of people have been waiting 15, 20 years for their appointment, some maybe just 2 years, 3 years, but you have only one chance to make a good first impression and get the answer. Because if you don't get the right answer, and if they have any more questions that you aren't familiar what's in your packet, they can put it in administrative review called 221 G, and that can turn into a black hole where you can overcome it, but the thing is that it just causes more delay, and then you would be waiting. And some people are not really close to the embassies or consulates. Have to travel far away from where they are, or they traveled there just for that appointment. So you want to eliminate any of that. So those are just some things I'm thinking about, and I think the passport and the financial documents are the ones you want to really be prepared for. After it's approved, they'll take your passport, put the stamp in, they'll give you a packet. It depends on the post, there's a little bit different things, but you have to pay the immigrant fee. And then once you've gotten into the country, have the stamp, you gave that packet to the Border Patrol, and you pay the visa, and not necessarily in that order. You can pay the visa earlier, but as long as you do all of that, and if it says don't open it, because that can cause a whole nother problem. But anyway, then a green card will come in the mail. And I don't know how long it's going to take for that, because there's been some delays in the past.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's more or less the short and the long of this. Let's see. There's a question by someone who says, is there any, or do you want to go ahead and read it, Dana? Sorry.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll read it.
Yeah.
So the question says, is there any way to have the consular interview without leaving the U.S.? My U.S. citizen mother is my petitionary, and her health is declining. I'm worried to leave her behind and not being able to come back if they ask for another waiver or find any other inadmissibility. So,
Well, there isn't a way to waive that appointment. There might be some, we really would need to know a little bit more about why you're doing that, and if you are going to be found with an inadmissibility, I would say if you don't have an attorney, just have a good consultation with someone who's
Mhm.
experienced, like, you know, like us, if you want, to double check what we think, because we are always screening for all possible issues. You'd have to leave if you there. I guess let me answer it this way: if you have an if you have an appointment, there's no way to waive the appointment. But is there another way to get your green card? Maybe. I don't know if you have an attorney what the strategy is, so that could be reviewed. The other possible thing is we may get immigration reform, and it might make a lot of changes about 3 and 10-year bar. It could also give a lot of people who don't have a status a pathway for work authorization and a green card and citizenship. So we're going to continue to monitor that. Um, so the next, I would say you have a consultation.
Yeah.
We double check that you're doing the right thing. But to answer the specific question, is there a way to have the interview without leaving? No, there isn't. Not right now. Okay, next question.
I'm waiting on my interview in Juarez. If Biden's plan passes for DACA recipients before my interview gets here, can I get my residence that way?
So when the question about Biden's plan is that what he's saying is that he's asking Congress to pass this bill, and it basically says everybody who has DACA and TPS would be able to apply for a green card right now,
Yeah.
right away, and then they'd only have to wait 3 years to apply for naturalization. So then that's long. That's faster than most people right now. If they have to wait for 5 years to naturalize, 3 is the shorter version, but it's only if you're married to and living with a U.S. citizen spouse. So if you're waiting for an appointment, I think you would just need to review that with your attorney or have a consultation once we have a little bit more data. Once we know a little bit more about how are the Juarez interviews, that were supposed to happen after the March reschedule, how fast are they moving? Once we get a little bit more data, we can sort of know when you might be scheduled. But also the reform, it hasn't, don't think it's actually been filed yet. I don't think, we still have to see what the negotiation is going to be. But, you know, let's say the reform's passed and you haven't had your appointment. Sure, I mean, unless it says otherwise, you should be able to apply that way. And if you just want to avoid the whole traveling, you might want to, you might want to have to consider how long would it be if you went to Juarez? You know, what would that wait like be? Getting your green card, or do you want to be in line with everybody else? You know, 800,000 or so people who are plus all the TPS, so that's like 1.4 or so million people who'd be applying for green card all around the same time. Um, so you have options, and that's the other thing that's going to we're still waiting to find out a lot more information. But you know, just let's be clear though, it hasn't passed yet, and I know you said that, and that's really good wording because but if it does, I mean, you could make a decision as to whether or not you want to go either way. And that's the same mentality for everything. Like we have clients that we've been on a 2 or 3 year plan, and if something were to come that's even better, I mean, obviously we have to have that conversation to see, is that what you want to do, and if you want to, you know, pivot or not. But there's going to be some considerations like how long will it take, and how long will it take to become a citizen later on, and what will the wait time be, things
Mhm.
like that. Okay, next question. Hope that answers you. Yeah.
Yeah, so thanks for your questions, guys. And the next one is, does the waiver I-601A have an expiration date? Mine has been approved since September 2019, but the embassy is closed now, and I'm still waiting to reschedule my interview.
You know, I've actually heard this question before, and I had to go like, I don't I believe the answer is no, that there is no expiration date for it. The concern is more as the data going to be outdated. We
Mhm.
know that the embassies and consulates have been closed for a long time, but if it's in queue and you've done everything you can at the time, then they can't hold that against you. But from everything that I've heard is that there is no expiration to an I-601A. What more happens is that for inactivity that's not COVID related would be like if I-130s get closed if due to inactivity. But if you've had it approved and the embassy's closed, my other question might be, did you already do the MVC part? Yeah, you said you're still waiting to reschedule. Okay, so you're going to be fine. You just have to wait. Don't worry about the I-601 expiring. So unfortunately, sorry, you have to wait though. Now I'm really excited if they really could get rid of the 3 10-year bar, if they could also get rid of the permanent bar. I was telling my staff earlier today that I'm having a hard time getting straight all the stuff that is happening in the last 2 days versus what is proposed because when we're talking with clients and potential clients, I'm trying to think about what we could possibly do. But we still can do a lot of things. Like we could either be getting documents collected, we could be filing some petitions, and we can be ready to pivot if needed. Most of our contracts are written that way, that if we had to change something, we could. And it's wonderful to have options, right? It's wonderful. So I don't know if we have any other questions. Feel free to put them in the chat or what have you. But thank you so much for joining us.
Looks like we just got one last question here.
Okay.
Ruby, is the public charge rule still being applied during consular interview?
So the one that we had back in the day before February, March 2020 is you still have to submit your I-64. But the updated one where you would have to submit the DS 5540 and the more harsher view of it has been in litigation. So the people who applied for the consular appointments before February, March 2020, they weren't under that requirement. But the thing is that there's a lot of belief that a lot of these harsh policies that are in litigation, the Biden administration, sort of hard to say that, I'm not used to saying Biden administration, is going to not pursue. So for example, the Trump administration gave up the stricter public charge, and then there was litigation, boom, 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 and then it was up to the government to keep litigating it if they, were to, because they were trying to keep it up. The thing is that we think that this has nothing to do with what Biden would want to do. So I think it'll just be a matter of time before we hear that they do not pursue the government doesn't pursue any of these litigation, and we'll go back to the original public charge, which was a lot more lenient, and you really just had to follow, the 125% above poverty lines. So, but the short answer is no, it's not being applied. And we're going to keep seeing some modifications with the clarification of that litigation. And yeah, but you still should update your payroll, pay stubs, your taxes, and your money part when you go to the appointment. And I mean, and just basically do a double check what's the current rule right before you go, because it's changing like all the time.
Yeah, truly.
So bankruptcy could be perceived as a problem for the harsher Trump public charge interpretation because of the subjective review of your finances and dues, what do you call it, your outstanding bills and your costs and things like that. But like I was mentioning in the last question, I think that they will be getting rid of that. And also, so I don't know which one to apply it to, but it wasn't considered an issue for the old public charge. In fact, we didn't really have to give a lot of financial information. I mean, it was pretty simple. It was just pay stubs, taxes, and maybe employment verification, or if you were self-employed, to show that. So I would say, like, we would double check the answer at the time of the public charge rule you would use at the time. But I have a feeling that you shouldn't have to worry about it under the Biden administration. And I know that this is, there's a lot of tough times and things like that. But if you want to get a closer look, we can have a consultation about that. So, well, we're really glad we had a lot of people on today, a lot of lively discussion. We do these every Friday at 11, and we got one at 12 today that's on Biden updates and all over the place, from asylum to court to family-based to employment. So our predictions off of what he's proposed and suggested in the first 100 days. But
So if you
thanks
guys want to
so
join
much. Yeah, you can go get a bite and come back.
us.
What do we got going on next Friday at 11?
So next Friday, we will be talking about, let me pull it up. I'll
I
give it
think it's employment based for
exact
H-1B.
title. Yeah, it's,
Yeah,
give me 1 second. It is employment based. We're going to be talking about,
and honestly, we'll monitor that too. We'll see what happens this weekend and next week about those changes.
yeah, because we've been monitoring all about the news, and next week particularly, we're going to be talking. It's employment based. It's going to be called Immigration and Business, all about the H-1Bs. So if you know anyone who has an H-1B or is just interested in that topic, be sure to refer them to us.
Because normally it's getting ready for H-1B season right about now, but we'll continue to monitor that. So thank you so much for joining us. And if you want to sign up for our newsletter, that's how we are keeping in touch with people.
Yes.
There's a link down below.
Yeah, of course. So like Attorney Power said, if you guys want to make it just easier, you guys see the link on the page here on the desktop. You guys can also head to our website at Ruby at Powers Law. I always mess up my sign over here. There's going to be a pop-up that comes up, and you can just put in your email and sign up to the newsletter there. And we also send the webinar registration links that we have weekly. So if you guys want, feel free to join us on the next one. If you don't know how to register, feel free to go to our Facebook. It'll be available there, and we'll also be streaming it live. So thank you guys so much.
One other thing, we've opened up on Saturday consults
Oh,
from about 9 to 12. So if you need a Saturday consult right now, if reform happens, we'll open up more. But feel free to give us a call at 713-589-2085. And we're doing everything through Zoom and phone for it to be COVID safe. So it allows you to not have to leave your home, and and especially if it's on a Saturday, that makes it nice for you too. So thanks so much for joining. Hope you learned something, and feel free to always contact us.
thank you. Bye.
Thanks.